Yo, what's good, you guys? It's Boomer and you're watching Bali Star. Today, we're getting into a video that says Gen Z looks old. So, what now? This is a video by a channel called Naomi Cannibal. I don't usually go on these female-esque videos, you know what I'm saying, that talk about tea and all that, but this isn't necessarily like, gossip or tea and all that, you know what I'm saying. I'm not all about those, but this talking about why Gen Z looks so old. Now, I know this stems from this one TikTok I saw. I'm pretty sure it stems from it. About this guy. He said he's Gen Z, but he said he looks old and stuff, man. I'm pretty sure he's about to be shown in this video. And yeah, I mean, honestly, what I can say is I don't really know it like that. Most people that I know that are Gen Z, I don't really know. Like, I don't really think about generations like that, you know what I'm saying? A person telling me their age, that's not like the first thing that pops up into my mind, you know what I'm saying? I mean, but I guess from what I see on TikTok, some people that are Gen Z, let's get straight on into it, man. Let's go.
Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So if you've been on the internet for a little bit in the past couple weeks, you have seen that the girls are fighting. And by girls, I mean Gen Z versus the millennials in general. And they're fighting about who looks older than who. So today we're going to get into these age wars, if you will, where it's come from, whether it's really new. Spoiler alert, it's not, and some of the reasons that I think might be behind it. So let's go ahead and get into the age wars. So this little age war, if you will, kicked up again recently after a man named Hallett posted a TikTok about how much older
Zendaya is older than me.
And how he's been mistaken for being decades older.
I am Gen Z and nobody ever believes me. When my mom and I walk out in public, people think that my mom is my younger sister. Right. When I tell people, I'm going to go hang out with my family, they think I'm talking about my children. I don't have kids. Right. I'm talking about my parents.
Well, maybe it has to do with your upkeep, my guy. Jesus, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I know my shit a little raspy and all that stuff, a little raggedy, you know what I'm saying? But all it takes a little touch up, and same for you, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm still the child. Does that make sense? I'll put it to you like this. Zendaya is older than me.
This survived the argument of why exactly Gen Z looks so old. Or
so it is to 96. Millennials, Generation Y. Y for Yaper, you know what I'm saying? Zoomers, Generation Z. Oh, I'm Zoomer? Generation Alpha. Okay. Lost Generation. Damn! Okay, so we got names of previous generations. Lost Generation, Greatest Generation, GI Generation, Silent Generation. Okay, is that because they didn't have sound TV or something, or color TV at that point? Baby Boomers. Okay, this is where I start to know the earliest of the generations that I know. You know what I'm saying?
At all, especially in
X, Y,
comparison to millennials, the generation
Alpha, what next? Beta.
Millennials are those born between 1981
Sigma,
to 1996. So they would currently be between about 28 and 43 years old this year. Gen Z is roughly between 1997 and 2012, making them between 27 and 12 years old, depending on birthdays. On Twitter, I've seen the Lord rule, meaning
but you know what I've seen as well and or heard that like millennials are the ones that like get called like, we don't look like our age that we're getting to, you know what I'm saying? So, you look like you're this, you look like you're that. I'm like, I mean, me and a couple other people that, saying that I've seen and heard, you know what I'm saying? They're like, they get that too. It's like, and Gen Z looks older, but yet millennials look, you know what I'm saying, opposite? That's crazy to me.
Older than Lord, who was born in November of 96, you're a millennial. If you're younger than Lord, you're Gen Z. Of course, if you weren't born later, November or December of 1996.
When was Lord born?
Then there's this unofficial in-between group called Zillennials.
That's
who obviously
Lord?
technically fall in one group or the other. But since older Gen Z is so close to the millennials, a lot of us have very similar lived experiences. And though there's no official age range, a lot of people consider Zillennials to be those born between 1995 and 1990.
Zillennial. You did experience tapes. The Crazy Frog ringtone, Nintendogs, Pixel. What the hell is that? Groovy Chick Stationery, Now CD. The Now CDs. Oh my god, the Kids Bop CDs, bro. Nah, those were a violation. Most songs on that were a violation. Panda Pop, Soda Boys, Crank That. Hey, you! Flow Ride is low, 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 low. Watching Harry Potter films in cinemas. Tracy Beaker, LimeWire. This is just for Gen Z? S Club. No, this is millennial. This is not Zillennial. S Club 7, nigga. What? You didn't experience Nokia 3310s. I don't know what that is. University fees lower than 9K. Government giving EMA a Hotmail address ending in .com. I remember that. Phone charms. Blue eyeshadow. Sex in the City character quizzes. Punky Fish, the OC and Dawson's Creek, bruh. Furbies, I remember Furbies. Footballers' Wives, the UK Garage, The Simple Life.
The
Simple Life.
Some people even expanded out to the entire decade, meaning that if you were born anywhere between
Kim
1990 and 2000, they would consider you
the girl that made Kim Kardashian.
And now more than ever, because we're all in the same internet arena, culture wars are more or less the norm. But today we're going to pick just one and talk about age and the fight over which generation looks younger.
Millennials look younger than who?
You. I haven't even washed my face because I overslept, which is why my sleep mask is still on. Because I was going to be late for work. And look, 34 and proud.
Just because that one guy that everyone thought he was like in his 30s and he said he's part of Gen Z, he looks older than his age. And then everybody ran with that saying, oh my god, yeah, like Gen Z looks so much older than millennials.
Millennials and Gen Z are arguing about who looks younger, and I just don't understand. I don't get it. I would never argue about something so asinine. Because I'm pretty. Who cares about looking young, old, goddamn anything? I'm cute.
In general, people have been saying that Gen Z looks older than their age, and in some cases older than millennials. Especially in terms of younger Gen Z who are tweens and teens currently. I think a lot of this can be chalked up to them not necessarily looking like they're aging faster, really, but styling themselves while older than their age. But if they dress differently, took all the makeup off, for example, they would look like the child that they are. And we've mentioned several times now how a lot of tweens and even teens don't have a lot of fashion or entertainment geared toward them. In terms of the older half of Gen Z, which is the group I fall into, one factor that's brought up a lot is stress, which can make one appear older. Stress and sleep deprivation can lead to the loss in skin elasticity.
I heard most of them got Gen Z.
Wrinkles and appearance.
They get anxiety. You know why? Because, most of them grew up with, like, you know what I'm saying? They grew up with the iPhone out. You know what I'm saying? No. Either grew up with the iPhone or years. I think it was still the iPod. You know what I'm saying? The original iPod before the iPod Nano and all that. I mean, the original iPod. I think they started being born right when, no. I mean, right when they started to get their conscious. So I'll say about like around 3 to 5 years old. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure the iPod was barely coming out. Either that or you had the Sidekick before that and MySpace. So they grew up around like the MySpace or gained conscious around the MySpace era or so. If not, possibly dating back to the AOL AIM times, you know what I'm saying? So they pretty much grew up around the internet age. Millennials grew up, you know what I'm saying, coming into the internet age, you know what I'm saying? Like most of us didn't remember not even having internet, but then internet came and it was a big thing. Like, like we came in during the internet boom, you know what I'm saying? Like right when, like, we started to see what internet was. Like, yo, what is this? Generation Z's, like they grew up knowing the internet and, or the earliest memories the internet was in it. You know what I'm saying? So they grew up around, like, behind the computer screen and now the phone screen and all that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, their anxiety is definitely, like, I think gone through the roof more, because I'm pretty sure they experience less than the generation before of like playing outside, drinking out of a water hose, you know what I'm saying? Like staying out to the street lights, playing tag in the grass, you know what I'm saying? Getting itchy skin on the grass, getting dirty, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure most have experienced that, but they had less time than the generation before experiencing that because that's when internet came so early.
I don't think I need to explain why older Gen Z is stressed, but to name a...
Parents 25, we should start saving for retirement. Me at 25, if I go to sleep now, I won't have to pay for food. It'd be like that sometimes, man. Probably. My parents 25, I'm having a child. I'll get an additional part-time job to support this new addition to our family. Me at 25, yes, duck.
Few reasons: inflation, especially the rent crisis.
I really thought I was going to get married at 26,
and a lot of struggling to find jobs even with university degrees. Many of these sources of stress are tied to anxiety and uncertainty about the future. And of course, I definitely don't think this only applies to Gen Z because several generations are more stressed than they've likely ever been in a while or ever. It's just comparatively, this aging caused by stress or the appearance of it is going to be more noticeable the younger one is. An interesting tidbit I found out...
Wait, what? I'm sorry, say all that again?
I definitely don't think this only applies to Gen Z because several generations are more stressed than they've likely ever been in a while or ever. It's just comparatively, this aging caused by stress or the appearance of it is going to be more noticeable the younger one.
Because I'm behind a computer screen and a phone screen just like y'all are, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's behind a computer and phone screen, like most people in the world, you feel me? So it's like, we're all going through it, you feel me?
An interesting tidbit I found out is that stress-induced aging, so to speak, is somewhat temporary. In an article from New Scientist, Anne Klein writes, "We become biologically older when our bodies are under stress, but younger again when we recover, according to a study that analyzed people's DNA when they had emergency hip surgery, had severe COVID-19, or were pregnant. This recovery suggests we have the machinery to be able to rewind the clock back at least a little bit," says James White at Duke University, who co-led this study with Vadim Gladyshev at Harvard University. And this does sort of make sense. Think of like when someone leaves that terrible job or that awful partner, and even if they haven't made any specific changes to their looks, like a haircut or something like that, they might still appear a little younger simply because a stressor has been removed. One thing I was curious about was whether vaping had a hand in making Gen Z look older. Growing up, we always heard about how smoking can make you appear older, and from what I found, vaping nicotine does the same, as nicotine use in general accelerates skin aging. According to the CDC, about 11% of American adults aged 18 to 24, which is Gen Z, vape regularly, compared to only 4.5% of the population overall. So at least for some of Gen Z, nicotine use may contribute to them looking a little bit older than what they are. And to return to the debate as to whether Gen Z or millennials look younger, I feel like even across the generation lines, there are two separate camps in ideology here. There are Gen Z and millennials who do believe the millennials overall look young or younger by comparison. Honestly, I think especially with younger Gen Z, especially the teenagers, even speaking for myself back then, you often expect 30-year-olds to look more like how you would picture someone middle-aged. I'm talking 40s and 50s. But when you get a little older, you realize most people in their 30s don't look old because they're not. That's also why they're aging like fine wine comments are funny to me sometimes, because now you'll see the internet say that about somebody who's like 32.
Aging like fine wine.
Then there's the second camp of both Gen Z and millennials who don't necessarily think Gen Z looks especially young or old. More so, both groups mainly just look their age with some outliers here and there, which is normal for each generation, but we tend to latch on to those outliers. Obviously, in both age groups, all age groups really, but Gen Z and millennials are the topic for today, there's anxiety around aging. Nothing new. It feels so scary getting old. Just like how trends aren't new, but they're just exacerbated because of social media. Also because of social media, people of all ages are in the same arena online, and we probably see more people's faces than we were ever meant to, often meaning more comparison. Daily, we're shown quote-unquote perfection, faces that are enhanced by cosmetic work or filters, or say people whose looks are tied to their income so they're more preoccupied with them and can afford to maintain their looks to a degree that's not necessarily achievable for the so-called average person. This can of course skew what we think a normal person, so to speak, looks like or should look like, and can even make us harsher critics of our own looks. I'm thinking back to the calamity that ensued a couple weeks ago with a 28-year-old showing off her untouched face. Also on the topic of social media and seeing a bunch of faces, cosmetic enhancements can sometimes make you appear older. Over the past decade or so,
what the raw face of a 20-year-old girl who hasn't had any work done looks like. She don't look that bad.
Cosmetic enhancements can sometimes make you appear older. Over the past decade or so, the rise of the Kardashians being a large part of it, it's become normalized for younger people, say teenagers or people in their early 20s, to have cosmetic work done. Older Gen Z and millennials were almost adults or were adults around this time, which was like the mid-2010s. And for most of our lives, often a person, especially a woman, having a lot of work done, especially something like Botox or fillers, it was associated with trying to appear younger, of course implying that they weren't as young anymore. One of the few exceptions I can think about is maybe nose jobs as status symbols, especially in early 2000s high school media, or boob jobs being mentioned typically to disparage women. But certainly, it was not common to turn on the TV and see 22-year-olds talking about needing Botox or things of the like, or even noticeably having it. In fact, it would have been more likely used as an insult to someone that age rather than a reality or an aspiration. And to drive this point home, according to a Vogue study published last October, since 2010, there's been about a 28% increase in people ages 20 to 29 getting Botox. This might be hard to explain, but going off that, I don't think it's necessarily the case that someone who's, say, 20 with maybe a lot of Botox or filler genuinely looks 40 like a lot of people say. I think in most cases, like if your life depended on it, you would be able to differentiate a 25-year-old with a lot of filler, a lot of Botox, and a 45-year-old, especially one without any work done.
To all the people who hate on my for getting Botox when I was 21, I'm 29 now and still no wrinkles. I don't know what to tell you. I actually believe that being 29 is old and that you get wrinkles in your late 20s. People in late 30s don't even have wrinkles yet. I'm going to tell you right now, the best anti-aging solution is to wear sunscreen and avoid smoking. If you're getting premature wrinkles and you're a smoker who doesn't protect your skin, you're causing the damage. But if it's genetic, then it's genetic.
Because a young person with that filler or Botox doesn't necessarily have the markers we associate with aging, like wrinkles, looser skin, or other obvious changes, at least to the extent that someone decades older than them might have. But they may have, say, cheek filler that we've come to associate with someone older trying to appear more youthful. That being said, I wonder if in a couple decades or so, once a good bit of the population has grown up seeing people with filler and things of the like from a relatively young age, will it not read as old or older to them? And that's if this trend continues, which a lot of
they really want to be looking like an alien, though. And I can see it not,
since a lot of people are pointing out we don't really know the lasting effects of decades of using Botox and filler from a very young age. One procedure that does in a way actually mimic the effects of aging, though, is buccal fat removal. That's because the procedure removes the fat pads from your cheeks, and as we age,
I don't really care about all this makeup shit.
Because it is real, unfortunately, accessible. Aside from the social capital that youth brings, because it is real, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of Gen Z and millennials especially are preoccupied with looking or being perceived as young, because one thing that does unite quite a few of us is the sense of arrested development. So a lot of us still kind of feel like teenagers or young adults because our lives might not be radically different from when we were that age, even if it's not.
Bro, I still remember being a teenager like it was like last year or 2 years ago, bro. I remember this one guy said something on TikTok. It's like, do you feel that, like, I mean, like, of course you know you're 30, but you don't feel like you're 30. You know, you get like an imposter syndrome or something. I'm like, I had to think about that. I was like, shit, yeah, no, I still feel like a teenager, bro. I feel like I'm 17 to like 21, and yeah, I'm not even that, but yeah, I still feel that, you know. And he said something like, you know, because like our parents are older now, but they're still, you know, keeping us in the mind state as like we're children. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, especially now, since like a lot more people are like living with parents, living around parents more often, you know what I'm saying? Because of this rising inflation of like housing and all that, you know what I'm saying? Food, housing, all that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, a lot more people are like, you know, than ever before living with their parents, and parents will always think of you as their baby. So it's like you stay around them, they'll always make you feel like, you know what I'm saying, like you're a teenager. Tell like, you know, you go out, you come back, your parents like, where were you? It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. You're like, Mom, I'm 26 years old. I can be out that late now. You know what I'm saying? But they still say stuff like that to keep you in that mindset that like, hey, not like, what, you're still 14, 15 years old or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, when you grow up and you're like in your like late 20s to early 30s, and you know you're possibly around that situation, it's like you don't even feel like you're in your late 20s or early 30s, because like I guess being in situations like that can still make you feel like you're 15 years old, bro. Like you still gotta sneak out the house, bro. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the many reasons why we don't feel like we're the age we're at.
Not for lack of trying. I think this is partly where a lot of the I'm a 35-year-old teenage girl, I'm a 25-year-old teenage girl jokes, I also make them come from.
Jeez,
and then the
middle-age
crises
crisis
of that, be it fashion or media,
are hitting earlier and earlier,
right
man.
now is heavily inspired by, if not a reboot of the same media we were watching as teens or young adults, so it's very easy to feel like you're in that space again. And nostalgia is definitely normal, but obviously this nostalgia overload we're living in right now, from a lot of articles I've read, it's been tied to a decreased optimism for the future. In her Substack piece titled How Millennials Grew Up and Got Old, author Anne Helen Peterson, a millennial herself, raised another interesting point regarding some millennials' seeming aversion to aging. Peterson makes the point that perhaps it's not necessarily youth per se that millennials are after, but the attention and spotlight of being the most talked about generation, which they've had for so long that much of Gen Z, myself included, has been miscategorized as millennials. Peterson writes, I'm not even talking about being the locus of cool, more like you just seem to matter less. People are less anxious about you, less mad about you. If anything, they seem slightly annoyed by you. You're no longer the future. You're the well-worn middle. This reminds me of how
the middle child.
A lot of women say that as they age, they become more invisible to society, especially in favor of younger women. Or, for example, when your mom had more
plays about 25-year-old. They've been trying to find a way to get rid of me for 3 years now. They covered all their bases. It's humiliating, so hurtful. I wish I was good at what I did. I just aged out.
Visible to society, especially in favor of younger women. Or, for example, when your mom has the new baby, and now, while you're definitely still loved, you might not be the center of her attention to the degree that you were previously, and that's a difficult adjustment. Peterson links this to a lot of millennials' bafflement when parts of Gen Z or even Gen Alpha isn't as familiar with the artists that they grew up with. The term she uses for this phenomenon is being washed, which was taken from the article In Praise of Being Washed, written by Zach Baron in 2018. At the time he wrote that article, he was 36, so he is also a millennial. The article is framed within Baron's excitement to see Beachella and Jay-Z's surprise appearance. He says during that performance and the internet's reaction to it afterwards, it became evident to him that Jay-Z, someone he'd been a fan of for decades, had gotten older. And he couldn't even really hate because that means so had he, calling himself and Jay-Z quote-unquote washed. In Baron's eyes, washed compared to being washed up is not a negative term.
Beyonce's gotten older too. Is she washed?
Which applies to older generations, which now is millennials and beyond, who are no longer in that generational limelight. Baron notes one positive aspect to not being in this limelight, as abrupt and uncomfortable it may feel, is that there is freedom in the decreased scrutiny. At that point, you're on the other side of your 20s and hopefully have a stronger sense of self and less to prove. He writes, you spent years building up something, taste, experience, judgment. You were trying to like what you saw in the mirror, as all ambitious people try to do. What I'm saying is, perhaps you actually like that person now. Perhaps you could use the mirror less. In terms of Jay-Z or any artist, athlete, or figure that's contemporary with our generation, there is a tendency to always want to see that figure, especially if we like them, as relevant or over-exaggerate their relevance in a way meant to sort of justify our own relevance. Not to say that if you're not 20 or fans of 20-year-olds, you're irrelevant, but that sometimes we do this because we're either oblivious to or a little bit in denial about the passage of time. And again, that's sometimes, and it's definitely not everybody. And it's not even only millennials doing it in this moment. As Baron wrote that article...
My boyfriend's son tells me when you were a kid, they had crayons with the sharpeners in the box. I'm 23. What the hell?
Over 5 years ago. I'm sure a lot of people my age, maybe even a little younger, can relate to that now, even though we're Gen Z. A current example I can think of are the reactions to MGMT's Time to Pretend being featured in the movie Saltburn. The song, which came out in 2007, experienced a resurgence in popularity, prompting some, mostly on TikTok, to hear the song for the first time. Some reactions to this were millennials feeling old that people had never heard the song before. But likewise, there were a lot of older Gen Z saying the same or saying this was making them feel old. And I think this illustrates two things. One, it's further proof that older Gen Z and younger millennials didn't consume completely different media, hence the portmanteau made of our two generation names. And secondly, it also shows that even older Gen Z is coming to the realization that our time in the generational limelight is temporary too, and it's sobering in a way. A couple weeks ago, I saw a comment of a kid saying they didn't really know what Hannah Montana was, and I almost wanted to cry, but such is the cycle of life. Gen Z isn't the first generation to be hit with the y'all look old as hell allegations. My whole life, and even still, I've seen pictures and videos of teenagers from the 70s and 80s and thought they looked decades older than they were, which is a common sentiment.
Dude, that's why I used to think too, bro. All like kids from like the 80s and 70s. I was like, dude, they do not look like kids, bro. They look like they're 30, mid-30s, bro.
Seeing people begin to actually analyze these pictures more, and technology's been helpful in that, and point out the reason a lot of these teens look older was just the way that they dress and style themselves. Certain
their faces looked older.
Or even glasses can make you look older, even if you don't necessarily look as old in the face. And then on top of that, we associate those styles with being older because they're decades old. Even if it's something young people were wearing at the time, since in your head you know they're way older now, it just seems more dated. And of course, it's also been pointed out that nicotine use was a lot higher in decades past, very high actually between the 50s and 90s, and nicotine is one of those substances that can make you look like you're aging faster.
Yeah, I'm like, which one's more harmful, vaping or smoking cigarettes, like when it was at its peak back then?
Then this one isn't related to kids or even young adults, but one that I see often is people being shocked that the Golden Girls were actually supposed to be in their early, mid, late 50s in general, I'll say, during the majority of the show. And to be fair, Betty White and Bea Arthur, who played Rose and Dorothy, were in their early 60s in season 1, so older than their characters. Rue McClanahan, who played Blanche, however, was 51 in the first season. And not only are their clothes dated, period accurate for them, but dated now, of course, but I feel like back then there was more of a sense of distinction in how different generations or different ages of adults dressed, whereas now I would say it's more common even for someone in their 20s and someone in their 50s to dress.
Yeah, because I've been with a couple women, a couple older women, you know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you, man, I've seen some silver foxes, the ones that look like the gray hair one on the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, there's definitely a difference in the way they used to look back then and the way they look now. Yeah, no, they definitely, you know what I'm saying, like, turned up.
More similarly than they might have decades previously. And actually, when looking this up, I did find out that people were making a similar point because their minds were blown and they were surprised that the characters from the Sex and the City reboot were...
Nah, I always thought that girl looked sexy. The girl to the left of the middle one, you know what I'm saying, with the brown hair. Yeah, I always thought she looked cute. Still smash.
We're the same age as the Golden Girls. At the end of the day, I feel like overall, in every single generation there is or ever has been, will be, there's people who look way older than they actually are, and there are people who look way younger than they actually are, and there are outliers of such kind in every generation. Like, for example, growing up, even though she's technically a millennial, she's like less than 2 years older than me, I remember everybody dragging, 16, 17-year-old Lorde, being like, girl, you really know you're 37, and bullying this teenager just because she looked older than her age. And even if you're not in my generation or hers, I'm sure that you have examples. And as someone who's 25, so, I'm in the middle of 20 and 30, y'all know that, I feel like you do a little bit more aging. You look different more so between 20 and 25 versus 25 and 30, which is why a lot of people are commenting there's not really that much difference looks-wise between someone who's late 20s, early 30s typically, so arguing and fighting about this. You know what, even if there was a difference, arguing and fighting about this, it's like, what's the point? Because one generation is older than the other. That's just how the cookie crumbles. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with looking your age. There's even nothing wrong with looking a little bit older than your age. And aging is a blessing. Aging is a blessing. Even though I'm young now, I know of people who weren't blessed to make it to 25. So,
no, yeah, facts. I was about to say that.
As always, thank you so much for watching.
Some people... I remember in hip-hop songs a lot, like, one of the lines will always be, like, we wouldn't live to see 30. You know what I'm saying? Like, they always say, my partner, didn't live to see 30. Like, I'm blessed to even live to see 30. So, nah, like, it's definitely a blessing to even, like, live to be the age that you're at. You know what I'm saying? So, alright, you guys. So, that was... Gen Z Looks Old, so now what, by the notorious Naomi Campbell, you know what I'm saying? Shout outs to her. She hella cute though, man. But yeah, no, this was a bomb video, bro. Straight up fire, man. Everything was like on point, informational, and like it really looked like it all just made sense. You feel me? Like going back from previous generations before and how they looked and the way they carry themselves to generations like now, to the youngest generations and how they carry themselves, how they look. Like it all just was just like on point, you know what I'm saying? Applause, you know what I'm saying? Encore. You know what I'm saying? Standing ovation, all of that to the video. But y'all let me know your thoughts about down in the comment section down below. You already know it's Boomer and Jer watching Bali Star. Make sure to leave a like, support the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new so that we join up with the all-star gang up in this thing. I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. 100. Ooh!
Yeah, yeah.